I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday and it's time for The Fix. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold those in power to account. We tell you what matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. When Shamila Batoy was appointed 2 years ago, there were high hopes that the rot in the NPA would be cleared out and that all the remnants of the state capture project would be swept aside along with Sean Abrams. This was a precondition for restoring trust in the institution and to enable it to take on those responsible for corruption on such a scale that it was referred to as akin to a coup. The state capture project succeeded to the extent that it did because key law enforcement agencies were part of the cabal of former President Jacob Zuma and used it to ensure protection for the backers of state capture and persecution for its opponents. So what has happened? Why are all these elements still part of the NPA? And what impact does it have on the rule of law and our constitutional democracy? Joining me to look at this is Kasak's Lawson Naidu and former head of the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal, General Johan Boyson. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here on The Fix. Before I start asking you exactly where the NPA is at 2 years ago, let's listen to Shamila Batoy respond to this very question from a webinar that she participated in of the Daily Maverick. And let's hear journalist Furiel Haffajee put this question to her.
So last week, Jacques Spau reported that since August last year, you've had this report on your desk drawn up by a crack team within your NPA that has pointed alarming fingers and things that we've really known about. Advocate Noko, who's now in the Northwest, and the advocate Selo Maema, who's also in the Northwest. Shouldn't they have been part of your clear out, your broom cleaning, because you have brought in your own team who clearly are driving things? And I wonder if you could tell us when you're going to work on that. Because for me, that's treating the Northwest a little bit like a Bantustan, because it is a place of enormous corruption and misspending. You've only got to read the Auditor General's reports to see that. So I wonder if you could take us into your confidence about that.
No, fine. Sure, I'm going to try to take you into my confidence. Firstly, let me clarify that Advocate Noko was the DPP in just on the Northwest issue, and yes, it seems like we are putting people there, and you said it's being treated like a Bantustan, so people that have some kind of smoke around them or allegations are put into the Northwest. So firstly, Advocate Noko requested a transfer to the Northwest because, as the DPP, because of family. And so that was why there was no reason not to move her there. She would have been doing the work in KZN. Now she was doing the work in the Northwest. As for Advocate Maema, and the media incorrectly reported that he was promoted. He was not promoted. Advocate Maema has been a deputy DPP for a number of years. He was a deputy DPP in the Northwest. And he was brought to Pretoria to do certain work. Let me put it that way. And when I decided that, I was going, those prosecutors that were brought to the VGM head office to do certain cases, when I decided that they needed to go back and I was dismantling that capability, then Advocate Maema went back to the Northwest, which is his station. He's from. That's where he's from. He's been there for a number of years. And so the media reports that he was promoted. I mean, that is completely incorrect.
What about Advocate Noko? Because I've been covering her for years and years, and not in ways that give me confidence as a South African.
So, in that regard, this is, when I first took office, it was about understanding what was going on in the NPA, and then there were, and I'm going to, this is about speaking about people that are still in the NPA. So I understand your difficulty. We've got to be fair. Yes, exactly. So let me just say this much, that we, both those against whom the allegations are leveled, as well as the institution, it's in the interest of all of us that there is a process that, you know, they can be cleared if they need to be cleared, or if they have found to have acted improperly, then there must be consequences.
That is, of course, the explanation of the National Prosecuting Authority head, Advocate Shamila Batoy. Lawson Naidu from CASAC, let me start with you. You've read the 96-page de Kock report. The findings against Ms. Moiponi Noko and Mr. Sello Maipa are damning. Are you satisfied with the National Prosecuting Authority head's answer there?
Good morning, Karima. Thank you very much. I think we must start with an understanding of what the nature of the de Kock report is actually about. This was a report compiled by Advocate Rodney de Kock, who is now a Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, together with three other senior officials within the NPA. They were requested by Advocate Batoy to look at the racketeering charges that had been instituted against General Boyson. And the reason for this is that when it comes to charges of racketeering, those charges can only be preferred on the authorization of the national director. All other charges in the criminal justice system and decisions of prosecuting or not to prosecute are taken by directors of public prosecutions in the various high courts. So this was to advise Advocate Batoy on those racketeering charges. They recommended that the charges be withdrawn, and in fact, those charges have now been withdrawn, the racketeering charges. The other charges against General Boyson and others has been referred back to the DPP in KwaZulu-Natal to reconsider in the light of the de Kock report. So I think, I think it's important to frame that de Kock report in that way, that they were asked to provide advice on a specific issue, which they did, and which has been acted upon.
But, Lawson, before I go to General Johan Boyson, the de Kock report finds quite damning evidence in the way in which those things were compiled. So whether the racketeering case against General Johan Boyson is now no longer going to be, acted upon, the behavior of the two prosecutors are clearly unlawful. They are found, in terms of the report, to have superimposed, particularly Mr. Maema, superimposed a witness's signature, for example. Unsigned documents are in the docket. They have the responsibility to uphold the rule of law. Surely such people shouldn't be in the NPA. At the very least, they should be suspended.
I would agree with that, Karima. I think given the damning findings in that report, strong action should have been taken. Disciplinary action should have been instituted. In relation to Advocate Noko, who is DPPs are appointed by the President on the recommendation of the National Director and the Minister of Justice. So a copy of the de Kock report should have been sent to the Minister of Justice and the President with a request for them to institute an appropriate inquiry into her conduct. Other disciplinary action could have been initiated against Advocate Sello Maema and others implicated in that report. And we must not forget that, this goes back, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Karima, the whole state capture project and the role of a unit within the NPA, the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit, that went after people like this, went after Pravin Gordhan, went after various other people in SARS. And that unit was headed by Tori Pretorius. And, the rot in the NPA runs deep. But certainly, I think, given the damning findings in this report, action should have been taken by now.
All right, General Johan Boyson, let me bring you in here. Your entire life was turned upside down as a consequence of you being charged together with other members. You were the head of the Hawks back then in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, you have gone so far as to lay charges against the two fingered in the report. Today, Sunday Times says that the former acting National Director of Public Prosecutions, Nomthobo Jiba, is set to to be charged with fraud and perjury for allegedly lying under oath about evidence against a former top cop, and that top cop is, of course, you. So what do you make of the fact that action is going to be taken against Ms. Jiba, but Ms. Moiponi Noko and Selo Maima is still in the NPA?
Good morning, Karima, and good morning, Lawson. First of all, Karima, I think I need to give credit where credit is due. Now, for more than 8 years, we had to endure persecution by Advocate Jiba and also by Advocate Abrams. And when Advocate Batoy took over as the NDPP, she had the courage of a conviction to appoint Advocate de Kock and 3 other members from the National Prosecuting Authority to review the matter against myself and the Cato Manor detectives. And subsequently, those charges were withdrawn against all of us. I just would like to add on to what Lawson had said earlier on. Although the rest of the charges were referred to the DPP and KZN, I saw a media release by the National Prosecuting Authority yesterday that the DPP and KZN had now declined to prosecute anyone and any of the remainder of the charges. That being said, I welcome the fact that steps are now being taken, but I remain deeply concerned that we still have 2 prosecutors who actually fabricated evidence. You know, it's a different matter if those prosecutors relied on false statements from witnesses. But in this instance, the 2 prosecutors, Advocate Maema and Advocate Noko, fabricated evidence. They told egregious lies in the prosecution memorandum, which they presented to the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Sean Abrams. And based on those egregious lies by Advocate Noko and Advocate Maema, Advocate Sean Abrams reauthorized my prosecution, and he reauthorized the prosecution of the rest of the Cato Manor detectives.
Now, Lawson Naidu, this is a critical issue. I'm looking at the prosecution's policy that guides how prosecutions must be performed and what should inform the role or the way in which prosecutors go about their jobs. It says a member of the NPA must serve impartially and exercise, carry out or perform his or her powers, duties and functions in good faith and without fear, favour and prejudice, and subject only to the Constitution and the law. When we look at the behaviour of Advocate Moiponi Noko and Advocate Selo Maima in terms of what the NPA's own inquiry found, headed up by the Deputy of the Prosecuting Authority, Advocate Rodney de Kock, did they conform to how they should behave in terms of the rules around prosecutions?
Karima, you know, the integrity of the NPA is critical to its effective functioning. You know, the oft-used phrase, you know, without fear, favour or prejudice has got to have real meaning in that prosecutors must, you know, impartially review the evidence before them and make prosecutorial decisions on the basis of the evidence before them. Not fabricated evidence, not flimsy evidence, but on real evidence that can stand up in court. And quite clearly in these matters, and it's not just the Boyson and the Cato Manor matters where this is called into question, but a whole range of other prosecutions that were conducted at the time that Advocate Jiba and Advocate Abrams were in charge of the NPA. So there's an awful lot to be answered for. And, you know, my mind now takes me back to a report that was done by Justice Zak Yaqub. I think it was in 2014 when Mr. Nkasana was in office. And we will recall that Mr. Nkasana had difficulty in getting cooperation from Advocate Jiba on the Boyson matter in particular. When he took over, he did not receive all of the files. He then asked Justice Yaqub to conduct an internal inquiry in the NPA. And his findings in the Justice Yaqub report was that there were serious issues within the NPA that should be resolved by, he recommended a judicial commission of inquiry with the ability to subpoena witnesses and the like. And hopefully these matters are now receiving the attention of Deputy Chief Justice Zondo in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry.
All right, that is, of course, Lawson Naidu from CASAC. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to look in a more granular detail at the de Kock report, which found that senior prosecutors within the NPA had fabricated evidence, superimposed witness signatures, and in fact had broken the law. Stay with us.